Good morning and good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Uh, if you recall, I just left the demonstration of this webhook in the last session. We had a couple of slides. After that, we started the demonstration of the webhook. So we looked at how the qualification works and how the payload is received at the server. And what kind of errors if the callback is misconfigured, what kind of errors we see, and how the authentication works, etc. Okay, so we left where the how the attachment works. That's where we stopped. I'll show how the attachment data is sent and what kind of forms involved in the attachments. Okay, so this is the webhook definition I used in the last session. I'll continue to use the same. And this is the form that is used for this webhook definition. Okay, and this is the URL where I have application server running on my laptop. So I'll start that. So to demonstrate before showing the payload, what kind of forms are involved for attachment. Okay, so I'll open this form. Okay, so here I'll use attachment from attachment. And say, so since my webhook definition has got some wrong URL, this one, this 9000 is, I mean, this server itself is not started. So now let's see. So this is similar to AR system webhook pending. So this attachment will have the attachment details. So if you see this pending attachment form has got two entries, one for 916 field and then another is for 917 field. So I use two attachment fields in the this webhook demo form, and so you got two entries in this attachment pending attachment form. So if you, I mean, how many? I mean, it depends. If you have 10 attachment fields, you'll have 10 records here. So along with AR system webhook pending form, you'll also have the entries in the attachment if you have the attachments. So whenever the system prepares the payload to call the callback, it uses the information from this form and it prepares the payload using the multi-form. Okay. The similar information goes to the pending error also. I mean, if you go to attachment, pending error attachment. This is another form. It's similar to AR system webhook pending error. So error will have the plain entry, and attachment will have uh, the attachments for the failed entries. So there are a couple of which were failed earlier. Okay. So now I'll start the server, application server, to serve the uh, webhook callback. Then we'll see the payload. Yeah, this application service started and listening on the 8000. So I'll go to the webhook definition and change this port to 8000. Then this particular server gets the callbacks. And I'll go to So if I save, I'll get the call here. I'll print the headers. We have seen this earlier. And this is the payload. It just printed the plain JSON, but there are two attachment fields also will be, I mean, are sent to this application service, but those were not printed here. So there is one more thing to the attachment. If you see, there is send attachment as a reference. So if you see this, I mean, if you select this, the attachment data is not, I mean, the binary data will not be sent to the application service. I mean, whatever the callback we are putting here, we don't send that attachment data to this particular endpoint. Instead, we will send the reference of it. We'll see how that works. So in this case, I'll send the attachments here, but the attachment information metadata of the attachment will go instead of the data of the actual attachment. So now if you look at this payload, you see this attachment one. This is what is the name of it? What is the size? If you look at the size of it, so the size is one is 43 bytes and the another is 103 bytes. That's what it sends. Just metadata information of the attachment and where the attachment is stored. Basically, this is the form name and this is the entry ID and this is the field name. So, so if this application wants to get the attachment data, then it basically can query the R server using this information, get the attachment. Okay, I think there was some couple of questions related to keywords uh, after our first session. So initially I said keywords were not supported, but it's not the case. So we can use the keywords in the qualification. For example, in this case, my short description, if equals to user, then only execute this field, the book can give like this. So the only drop, I mean, from mid-tier, you cannot use like this. If you try to use like this, it just expands the user and saves like this. So whatever the user is logged in currently, that will be replaced when you save it. But if you are using API or some other like IS UI, it will allow. But that's only the a change. If you want to use keywords here, just use keywords like this. Use after dollar, use forward slash, and if you can use this, it still works as a keyword at the runtime. It will be saved like this, and it will use. So, for example, now if I try to create entry using some other, let me enable the filter logs also. Actually, I'm not able to select the fields due to some recording button is coming here. I will do filter logs first. I'm inside the container of my server where I'm demonstrating. So let me cat this. This is the filter log I just enabled. Just scraping for my user. So so my webhook definition is like this. This is the qualification. And if I try to create entry using something like demo one, something not demo, save. So it will not call. I mean, the webhook doesn't get triggered because the qualification is not met. If you see, failed the qualification. Let me create one more entry. But this time I'll use my user, whatever the user I use to log in into this. So if I save this, let's look at the filter. Still it failed. You see the qualification is still failed here. It's the second one. This time I'm not sure. I have to check. This is the field I used, and this is save. See the failed qualification. This is something strange. I'll not waste time here. I'll come back on this. But that's how you can use the qualification using the keywords. I'll put the message why it's not working later. So basically, you can use. I tested it worked actually. So it you'll have to use $/user. I mean, whatever the keyword you want to use, and then dollar. This is how you can use the keywords in the qualification. Okay. There is one more field we want to check. Okay, let me remove this. This is one more field we can utilize in the payload. If you want to send some additional payload to take some decision in your service, you can send that. For example, if you want to send uh, uh, what is your environment, for example, is dev and something developer. Who is developer? You want to send like this. So it's a plain JSON. It should be static, no keywords and no fields. You can send this information in the payload. Let's see how it works. So now create. Yeah. So now if you see the additional fields that I've added uh, in the definition here. So in the custom JSON, this is one field, and this is another. There are two fields that are added to the payload. So this is environment is dev, and there should be some other one dev. This is another field that got added, appended basically to the original payload. That's how you can send additional information to the payload. And there's one more thing here in the headers. We haven't seen this. If you want to send some additional headers apart from what server sends, that you can use here. So I observed in one of the customers' custom webhooks, they use this header to send the token, authorization token, basically. I mean, sorry, OAuth to web access token. For example, you can send authorization, just authorization or something like that. Some token. And you can send as many you want. A custom or something. Now that header will be sent to the your service. Something like this. So now this is the 90 values has come now. Now if you see this, this header is passed here. This is one header. This is another. I think this has passed as a value of this. The colon didn't work. Maybe separator. Now this is, I'll find out what is the separator here. So generally you can send multiple headers here. Now if you look at this, authorization header is gone, but the entire thing has come as value here. So you can send multiple headers in this particular this field. Basically, you can have multiple headers in this field, and those headers will be passed. Okay. From the demonstration point of view, that's all I have. I can pause here for some questions. Otherwise, I have some slides to show. Show some slides. Yeah, this we have seen the execution in the last session. How the internal working of the webhook. This is a kind of recap of what system forms we use while processing the webhook. So this is a system webhook. This is basically contains the definition of the webhook. And for each entry in this particular form, we will have an associated filter. And that filter gets triggered whenever the qualification is met that is defined in the webhook definition. So that filter basically creates entry into this AR system webhook pending form and also sends a message, a JMS message to the webhook subsystem to act upon. So basically this pending form, AR system webhook pending form, contains all the callbacks to be processed basically and currently being processed. That information will be here. And these are the certain error codes we will use to retry. Basically, if one callback fails, whenever server invokes the endpoint, if it gets the failure and one of the reason of is this, then we will retry. And this pending error is basically kind of a log. There's no, there is no use basically in the execution of the pending execution of the webhook callback. Once the uh, once the webhook callback is failed and it attempted multiple times, if it is allowed to attempt retry, basically that entry gets moved to this error form. After that, there is no use of that particular entry. It's just for logging purpose. If you want to debug why that particular callback failed, you can go and check this error form. That's all. So once the entry is moved here, there is no recovery. You can move back that entry, but by default, there is no recovery for that particular entry. It's gone. This pending attachment and pending attachment error are similar to this webhook pending and webhook pending error. These two forms are for basically attachments. These are certain CCS parameters that are in play whenever the webhook gets executed. Webhook pending polling interval is one of the CCS. This is basically used how frequently to read this particular AR system webhook pending form. So if the entry gets created into this particular AR system webhook pending form by the corresponding filter, basically, the filter also sends a message to the webhook module. So if that message is missed for some reason, but still that webhook module will go and check if there are any unqueued, non-enqueued entries in this particular form, and it retrieves max basically 100. This is hardcoded. There's no configuration for that. So at max, it retrieves 100 records and processes them. This is another parameter to define how many threads to be in the system. If you remember this diagram, there are some worker threads that are serving the request from the pending form. So by default, it is 10. So you can increase depending on the load that is there in the pending form. This is the retry interval. Retry interval is used whenever the callback failed. But that callback, if the callback failed, that entry is still be there in the webhook pending form with the status is as failed, and that will be retried if it is qualified for the retry after these many seconds. So that's what it tells. By default, 300 seconds, you can configure the value that you want. This is again related to the failed entry only. So how many times you want to retry? Basically, if there is any failure in the pending form, then it keeps on retrying these many times apart from these many seconds apart. So if it exhausts all these limits, then it moves to the error form. These are the CCS parameters that are currently related to the webhook execution. This is new that we are adding into the 23.30 the coming patch. There are two more CCS parameters added as part of this feature. Basically, the history behind this feature is there was one escalation from Ericsson. So that was in that case, what was happening? The payload of the basically they have configured webhook with one of the field in the here they configured some field here in the field list, and that field has got the data of MBs. I'll show you that. It's coming from Ericsson. Okay. So this is the payload of that particular failed instance. It is coming from HPD help desk, and this is this is the field detailed description. This is the field. This field is part of your webhook definition. That webhook definition, and this field has got this much data. It's very huge. There could be some defect because if you see these things are repeated actually in the same field. The same data is repeated. But whatever reason, this particular data has got around 3.5 MB if you look at this. So if you a server is able to send this much payload to the endpoint, but in this case the endpoint is AAF, that's not able to handle this much payload. It was saying some internal error. Sorry. So to address this problem, we have come up with truncation of the payload. So you can configure basically what is your max payload size. You can configure whatever the number, let's suppose 1000 characters, you can configure that. So if payload size is exceeding this particular size, then we will truncate the fields, certain fields that can be configured in your webhook definition. You see this, these are the new fields that are added in the this new release. So this truncation requested fields, you can mention whatever the fields you want to truncate. If payload exceeds the limit, for example, I can give this number, this field ID here, so that if this particular payload exceeds whatever the size I mentioned in the CCS or here also there, if there's a field max payload size. So this gets the precedence if you configure something here. Otherwise, the whatever the configured in the CCS that will be used. So you have webhook max payload size CCS parameter. At the same time, we have max payload size field on the AR system webhook system form. So this will be applied to this particular webhook only. And if you define something, it gets the precedence. That there is one more CCS parameter, max field size. So if the payload if the payload size exceeds this particular limit, then we will truncate the fields. But while truncating, how much should I truncate? So you can configure how much you need to keep in the field. Let's suppose if you keep 255 and there is a field, if you configure here, and if this field is exceeding this particular 255, let's suppose 500, then it truncates to 255 and keeps into the payload. So that's how this CCS works. There's one more field here, use GZIP compression. So if you use this, basically the payload is compressed and payload is sent without any truncation, but with compression. If you don't want to use compression, and you can use this truncation. So either of these, it's basically mutually exclusive. If you want to use compression, you cannot use truncation. If you want to use truncation, you cannot use compression. It's like that. This is the new one coming up in this patch. Yeah, these are some initiatives to have taken place in outside the product, like irrespective of the release. If there is some issue, we are fixing in the product, but some of the customers may not be on the right patch where we provided the fix. So in that case, we are trying to address some of the pain points outside the product, so that will be applicable for all the versions that are deployed without having a fix in the system. For example, one of the problem was the entries were there in the AR system webhook pending always, even though they are failed. So generally, there were some issues earlier. Generally, system takes care. The server takes care if the entry is failed and it attempted multiple times, and it just moves that entry to pending error. But if it's not happening, we have applied an escalation. This escalation is there in all the environments, basically for all the customers. So this escalation is scheduled to move the failed entries from pending to this pending error using the same logic what AR server has. It checks the status of the pending entry if it is failed and how many times it tried. Then it just moves. There is one more problem with the pending error. There were, I think in case of Ericsson, there were a couple of 100,000 entries in this particular pending error form, and they are piling up. So, but there's no use of these entries except just looking at what happened if you want to really debug. But after 1 month or so, it won't be useful even for debugging. So it's still under progress. So we are having some cleanup mechanism. It's a kind of cron job that runs every weekend or so. It just checks the records from this particular pending entry. If they are 1 month old, just deletes them so that it keeps only minimal entries that are really needed for debugging. Yeah, these are a couple of out-of-the-box webhooks that we ship as part of BMC products. So depending on this URL pattern, you can identify who is the team and who is the owner. I just listed down here to, in case of the failures happening at consumer side, but not exactly the problem with webhook, then we can contact these persons. These were a couple of general issues we identified so far as part of escalations. Webhook qualification. So most of the times the escalations were like the webhook is not triggered. So most of the times the qualification is not right. The qualification is not met. After correcting the qualification, basically things started working. So basically, if the webhook is not triggered, we'll have to check whether the entries getting created in the pending form or not, or it is getting moved immediately to the error form or not. If the entry is not present in these two forms, and you don't see the webhook callback is not triggered in your application side, I mean the endpoint side, this is the one thing you'll have to check qualification. Just turn on the filter locks on the user ports and see this particular filter webhook underscore webhook ID and auto-generated filter got triggered, and qualification. What's the status of the qualification, whether it's failed or not? The other one is filter order. Yeah. So this whatever the auto-generated filters for each webhook gets the order like 1001 and 1002 like that. So, but these are not visible in the Dev Studio. So if you are writing some workflow for a form that is part of your webhook definition, and if you are using go to statements, like if you want to skip some of the filters and if you want to go to the last filter, and assuming if your last filter is, let's suppose 1000, and if you say go to this particular order 1000, and if you are assuming that this webhook filter doesn't get triggered, it's not true. The webhook filter gets triggered because your go to is still till 1000 or below 1000. So we have seen some issues with this, like my webhook is getting called twice, even though I updated my entry once, something like this. So this is because in your workflow somewhere you have written go to statements to skip all the filters, but this filter is getting executed second time. That's why you see the pending entry gets created second time in the pending form, and that gets processed second time. So we'll have to check if that is the case. I mean, if there are, I mean, if for one update you are getting multiple calls, or mostly twice. If you get the call twice, this is the place we'll have to check. Other things like if you are using IMS authentication for example, for this AAF and IMS, for these webhooks, we use IMS authentication for AD endpoints. So most of the times tokens are not valid, or tenant ID is not mentioned properly. We have seen this kind of errors. Our token is expired. So we'll have to check. Depending on the error, we'll have to check with the consumer team. Sometimes services are not available. That's a clear error. So pending entries are not being processed. This is there is a monitoring enabled in the SRE dashboard actually. So I think today, if there are more than 5,000 entries in the pending entries, we'll get alert, and we'll have to see what could be the reason. So if it is enqueued, if you look at the pending form, so if there is nothing here right now. If you see this field particularly, if it is enqueued, which means it's already put in the queue, but it's taking the subsystem is taking time to process. If it is not enqueued, which means somehow the JMS message is missed, it gets enqueued after these many seconds, whatever you configured here. We have talked about this in the CSS parameters. So this is polling interval. After 300 seconds, it gets queued. So we'll have to check the status of this particular entry. What is the case? So if it is not enqueued, probably we'll have to decrease that interval to from 300 seconds to something lower down, so that every time here. So we'll have to configure this to some lower value so that your this selector thread. Basically, it will go and read this pending entries frequently. Even though you don't receive the message, it will go and read every time. It just only reads 100, 100 and 100, and it keeps into the queue. So if you decrease this value, so it increases the frequency, and it just processes each time 100 records, and so that your throughput will be increased if you see more entries in the pending form. And pending entries, error entries are growing up. It's still under progress. We are keeping that cron job to pass the entries from this particular form, which are older than a month. Payload size we already discussed. We are coming up with a new feature to truncate the fields data if the payload size exceeds 30.5. These are some issues related to the endpoint service, not exactly with the webhook functionality, webhook's feature as such. If you find this kind of errors, we'll have to consult the consumers, not basically the platform team for this particular kind of errors. Yeah, couple of frequently asked questions. So how to distinguish between the out of the box and custom webhooks, as we discussed in the slide. If you find this kind of pattern, these are out of the box thing, but customers also may create such webhooks using such URLs, but this exact information you'll have to come up with from these application teams. They only know what webhooks they are shipping out of the box. Yeah, if customer has these many 100,000 failures, what should we do? And can they be processed? These are the questions couple of times asked. So if they are failures, if they failed and they are recoverable, I mean if it can be retriable, it will be retried by default 280 to 88 times using 300 seconds gap. If it exceeds all the configurations, then it will be moved to the error form, and there is no recovery from there. Yeah, it is. We discussed this how to read this log, and it's very confusing. So if you look at the filter log, webhook log. So if you want to check particular pending ID, this is the webhook pending ID, and that you want to debug what happened for this particular pending ID. So it may not be, you may not find from this particular line. You cannot say that the second line is related to this particular pending ID. You have to find out this trace ID basically. So this is the trace ID here, and just grep for this particular trace ID. And you will find all the relevant entries for the particular pending ID. This is only the option we have now. Probably we can keep this pending ID in the prefix so that you will have the information upfront, but that we can think of future.